was born in Leeds, at St James's Hospital on the 7th of February 1968. Attended Allerton Grange High School. The best school years I had were actually at that high school. I developed a good relationship with a lot of the teachers there.
He was a very, very good student when he was here, actually. He was, I think the thing that most people remember about Brian was that he was a very, very cheerful, very courteous young man. And he succeeded very well here. He stayed on into the sixth form. He had 1 year in the sixth form here after he'd done his main O-level examinations. And I think, talking around amongst the staff who still remember him well, they actually have a very high opinion of him as a person.
They thought I should be looking into away from football. Things like going into the Navy, advertising, that kind of thing.
When he came to us at the age of 13, and at the age of 13 he was already playing for Leeds City Boys, and he was an outstanding football talent. And gradually, as he went through the school, it was obvious that was where he was going to go. But advertising was something he was very interested in during the time.
They didn't really encourage football at Allerton Grange. It was more of a rugby school, and I think one of the teachers had a run-in with a few of the players a couple of years before me who would refuse to play for the school in preference to playing for the city team. And as a result, when I went there was a bit of friction, and in the end I had to actually get my parents to come up and to say, well, I'm either playing for the inter-city side or I'm leaving the school.
The main boys' sport at that time was rugby rather than football. It was rather a strange coincidence at the time. We had both Brian Deane and David Batty, and of course their careers have followed on in very parallel lines, both with First Division teams and indeed with England. And it was true of both David and Brian that there is always a degree of conflict between maintaining academic motivation and also maintaining their skills and experience on the football field. Brian, I think, held it together very, very well.
I was a kind of pupil that had to work hard at school. I always used to get distracted. I used to like to mess about with girls. I used to like to mess about with girls. And, I had some quite distracted friends as well. I mean, my report card was always saying, is easily influenced, and I could have done better, but I didn't do bad because I think I realised at the right time that I had to get some kind of education behind me.
He got a number of O-levels. As I said, he stayed on into the sixth form and retook some, and got good grades in those. So we were very pleased with his academic progress. He set a very good example while he was here. Teachers
tend to look at it and think, well, there's only so much of a percentage that actually go on to become a professional footballer, and I suppose at that age, the only thing that's concerning them is how you do at school, which is a good thing, I think. And I could always detach myself from my studies, and I always took up the football. I didn't really want to say too much to people at school about how I was playing, or if I'd gone on trial at a club. I never used to really tell anybody, Well,
he never ever had any time off for illness, ever. But it was almost a standing joke that every time you saw Brian in the morning, how are you, Brian? Not feeling too well today, Mr. Harmer. Got a bit of a headache, a bit of a stomachache. And it was amazing that such a seemingly sickly child should be so very, very physically fit all the time. That form teacher saw him about 3 or 4 months ago and went up to him at a function and said, how are you, Brian? He said, great to see you, Mr. Harmer. Actually, I'm not feeling too well at the moment. So apparently the tradition still goes on.
I played for a team in Leeds called Yorkshire Amateurs. I went to the trials when I was 10 years of age, a place called John Smeaton High School, on a really cold day, really cold. The only thing I can remember is the whole sort of like playing area was like this massive gravel thing, and it had frozen. As the night got on, it used to soften up, and then, of course, like, you know, you'd get like the chippings flicking up on your clothes, and they'd be, you know, really filthy, you know. But, you know, I stuck it out there, and the manager there, Dave Cam, you know, he took a shine to me, and he picked me for the final squad. And I went on, I played for them for about 4 years. Had a good time there, had a really good time. I scored about 63 goals in one season, you know. I'd always wanted to be a professional. I've got an older brother, Tony, who was unfortunate in a sense because the school that he went to didn't really encourage him to play football. A bit like myself, but I think back in them days, I think there was a few more restrictions, and there are a few more closed doors for, you know, say my brother or whatever.
Well, Brian's always been interested in football. When he was a kid, before he could sort of like play with the big boys, he used to come down to the rec at the bottom of the road, and like he used to want to join in, and I used to have to tell him, look Brian, you're not big enough, you just have to watch or go and play with them kids over there, which he didn't used to be too pleased about. But
like Big Brother does.
Well, that's what big brothers are for. Yeah. But yeah, you know, he's always shown an aptitude for it, and you know, seeing him play for his school team, he was actually captain of the year above him. He was captain of that team, and even then you could see that he did have something, you know, maybe that little bit extra. And you know, we've seen that, and we've told him, you know, make the best of it.
I think there again, he used to see a lot of himself in me, and still does. He used to tell me to make sure I practice with my left foot as well as my right.
I used to think, well, wouldn't it be good if I was just as good on my left as I am on my right? And so one of the things I pointed out to Brian when he first started playing was, make sure you're as good with both feet, because you know that is one hell of an advantage if you cut inside or if you can go on the outside. But if you can shoot with both feet, then you know, if you're fit and you've got everything else, then you know it's going to take a lot to stop you.
You know, I used to get a tennis ball and juggle it with both feet, things like that. And you know, he used to say to me things like, you know, Brian, you're never going to know when it's going to come in handy. You know, you'll be on the pitch with players who cannot use both feet. You know, so I took that bit of advice. You know.
The three-a-side, well, as usual, I got thrown in goals and the two top strikers battled it out.
But I used to let him score the odd goal so he wouldn't get his head down. But I mean, as you can see, the roles have been well and truly reversed.
My parents encouraged me the way I would have liked to have been encouraged. I think a lot of pressure is put on kids when they're young by their parents going along to watch them. And, you know, if say the father is the type of person who had always dreamt of being a footballer, he can sometimes see himself in his child. My parents used to just buy me boots and then, you know, give me bus fare. I used to get on with it, and I found that by doing that, you know, it was something that I wanted to do. It wasn't something that was being forced on me, you know. And as a result, you know, it was more of a hobby, you know, than a chore. You know, I go over to see my parents every week, and you know, I come through the door. My mum, she treats me like a little kid still. You know, I come through the door, and the first thing she wants to know is if I want something to eat.
I always think because he's over there, he mightn't be getting enough to eat. I suppose all mums like that, really, you know.
You know, my dad, if he's seen anything in the paper about me, if I scored a goal or anything, the first thing he says is, you know, I've read this about you, I've read that about you.
Yeah, we're happy to know that, you know, he's a footballer and his name in the papers and sometime on television, you know, it makes us feel happy.
I think the only thing I wanted to really do was play football or sports in general. So anything from that side of taking the advice, I used to do it.
He always had football. Ever since he was 8 years of age, he been doing football.
I didn't like rugby, found it boring. Table tennis I used to play as well. And, you know, I used to do a bit of athletics as well.
You were very interested in football because sometimes, you know, freezing cold and it's amazing he goes out, you know. He and a mate, they always go together. You were very interested in football.
Well, from school, obviously, people spotted him. A team called Yorkshire Amateurs actually have spawned quite a few players. Paul Madeley, I think, used to play for him, but to name but one. They sort of like got hold of him, and he played for them from the juniors right up to the youth team.
He played for Yorkshire Amateurs to start with, you know, and then for his schools.
When you were playing for City Boys.
And all.
I was playing for Leeds City Boys as a 13-year-old, and I had a really good season. And I remember we had the West Yorkshire Cup final, and we played against Bradford. Yeah, Bradford. And, you know, we beat them, I think we beat them about 5-0 in one, 4 or 5-0 in the second leg at their place, and I got all the goals, you know. And I remember after the game we were going, oh, those scouts there, it's like somebody from West Brom and somebody from Notts County and somebody from Leeds, you know, and a couple of other clubs, Bradford, you know. And, you know, I started getting excited by the prospect. And sure enough, I went down to Leeds on trial as a 13-year-old in the summer of that year, and it was at Carnegie College. Yeah, that's right. And I remember I went there and I was like, everybody else was 15, and I'm thinking, well, you know, everybody just looked so much bigger than me, and, you know, stronger and faster. So I went there the week, and, you know, it wasn't really fair. We were playing in trial matches, and, you know, I was getting stuck on the wing, or I was getting stuck somewhere, you know, where I couldn't really show what I could do. And obviously, you know, with everybody being bigger than me, I didn't really get a chance to shine. I remember the real star of that trial that I went to was Tommy Wright, who had come down from Scotland, and you know, it was really hot news then. He went on to sign for Leeds, and I think he went from there to Leicester. he's there now. He's had a really good season. There's a few other players. I can't think of any that come to mind, but I've still got the picture at home, and like I look really. I've got this serious afro. You know, that was probably my first trial.
When Brian comes with these football things, and I used to have to watch them. Oh, especially when you were playing for Yorkshire Amateur, I have to watch the full team one night, and I nearly cry when I look at all those muddy socks. Oh, it was terrible. But they used to have to take it in turns. So sometimes I said to him, Brian, it look as if your turn comes around faster than anybody else, you know. But he used to do it, and I was happy for him.
I broke my leg playing for an amateur side, Yorkshire Amateurs, when I was 17. And, you know, I was really gutted because, like, a few of my friends had signed schoolboy forms or apprenticeships, you know, with, say, Leeds or some of the other clubs. One of them went to Man United. And, you know, I felt like I was, like, left on the shelf. And I was really upset. We had my club side, Yorkshire Amateurs, had a trial game against Everton, some schoolboys that they had, and I went there and I played really well, but, you know, I scored when we drew 2-2, but, you know, nothing was said. I was a bit disillusioned after that. And then I broke my leg in the December, you know, and I was just really gutted. I thought, well, this is it, Brian, you've got to start looking for other ways to make your living.
A lot of people don't know this. When he was 17, was it 17? And he had a really bad. He broke his leg really badly in two places and dislocated his ankle. And I was in the Gulf at the time on board HMS Nottingham, and he wrote me a letter, or Stephen wrote me a letter and said what had happened. And then Brian had always dreamt of being a footballer when he was younger.
He's heartbroken.
And he was beside him. Stephen said he was beside himself. And Brian actually wrote me and says, oh, this is it, I'm finished. And I wrote back to him saying, don't be so stupid, you know. You're a young guy, you know, you'll heal and you'll come back, and I'm sure that you will make it.
The end of the season came and my leg was healing quite well. I thought, well, maybe I should give it another try.
He played for Yorkshire Amateurs against Doncaster Boys. In fact, I took him to that game and he produced a hell of a display. He scored about 4 goals or something, and they beat him 4-2 or 4-3.
So I wrote a letter down to Doncaster Rovers asking them for a trial, and luckily the chief scout Dave Blakey was actually at Leeds when I went there on trial, and he told me to come down.
And then he went down to Doncaster on trial, did the business there, scored a few goals, and as I say, the rest is history.
Billy Bremner was the manager when I first went there, and he got offered the Leeds job. I think it was about November time, and he went. Dave Cusack took over.
I joined Doncaster Rovers in 1985 as a player. Brian was on trial from Leeds United at the time, I think it was, and having trained with him from a very, very early stage, I think I saw a lot more in him than other people did. He was raw, he was young, he was naive, but he'd pace, he'd height, he'd ability, natural ability, and it just needed nurturing.
and I'd been playing in the intermediates and the reserves, and I'd been going to college, and I was doing a BTEC National, which is like a business diploma thing. I was on, and like I was enjoying it, you know. It was like there was no pressure on me. I was going to college, and like I was having a good laugh. You know, I mean, at the back of my mind, you know, the only thing that I wanted to do was play football. But I thought, well, you know, if I can sort of like have a lime here, just try and get something behind me, and I'm still playing football with a professional team, then, you know, I've got the best of both worlds, really.
He was always there or thereabouts. He showed good ability, good appreciation for other players, and he just needed to be pushed and pushed and pushed, which eventually we had to do, because in the August of '85, I ended up becoming player manager of Doncaster when Bill left, Billy Bremner. And to see such a rare talent as Brian Deane was a bonus.
And Dave Cusack took over, and you know, he offered me a contract straight away, a professional contract. I was only 17 at the time.
For a man of 6'3", 6'4", he was always there. Well, I don't really want to come to the forefront. I don't really want to sort of push myself, but he had to realise very, very quickly that if he was going to be a player in the pro game, that's the sort of thing he had to do. He had to stand up and he had to be counted, and basically make a nuisance of himself.
You know, he showed a lot of faith in me. He gave me my debut a couple of months later, which the paper said I had a good game, but really had a nightmare. I felt like collapsing after 10 minutes, you know, because I was so nervous, you know.
I used to give him a hard time, Brian. I used to make it as difficult as I could as a centre-half playing against a centre-forward. And I remember this one morning, we were having a little five-a-side to finish, and I've been giving him a bit of a dig and a tussle with him, like, and I'd gone for this ball, and the next thing I can remember is that I was crying, and it wasn't through laughter. I'd had the thick end of Brian's elbow straight in my nose, and I had to leave the field to sort of compose myself, and tears were just streaming down my face. And like I said, the rest of the squad felt it was very, very amusing. I didn't, but it's part and parcel. I got on with it, and that was the first sign I saw of Brian Deane growing up, that he'd been buffeted from pillar to post, and he'd reacted in a sensible way. Like, he'd just not got out of order, but he said, "I've had enough of that now, like, and this is for you." And that was, yeah, pleasing for Brian, I'm sure, and pleasing for me, because I realised in an instance that, yeah, he's got a little bit else to his game as well. And yeah, that was one of the pleasing sides of it.
You know, he was good to me, and you know, I kept my place in the side for the last 13, 14 games, and I scored another 2 goals. So I was really pleased with that.
It was only 18, but a goal scorer at 18. The first club to show interest in him was Cambridge United, and they wanted to take him down on trial or loan to play in a few games down there. And I said no. I said, you know what he's about. I've told you how good he is. This was talking to Chris Turner, the manager of now Peterborough. I've told you how good he is. If you want to take him, then put some money on the table and take him. There was always a few clubs, because of his size and his ability, on the fringe. I mean, Sheffield Wednesday at one stage was sort of half interested, but I mean, he's a sort of character that loads of people would, because he stood out. I mean, not only was a foot bigger than most people, he was quick, and like I said, he had natural ability.
What about the move to Sheffield United? When did you first learn of Dave Bassett's interest?
It's funny, because like Dave came to see us when we played Mansfield in a league game. I think we lost 2-0 or 1-0. And I had an absolute shocker, honest. Terrible. And somebody said that Dave Bassett was in the crowd. I think Clive Mendonca came to us on loan, and he was playing, and like, because Harry had just taken over at Sheffield United, and he came and had a shocker. I had a really bad game. I mean, I was only 19, you know, and like playing in a struggling side, you know, and I just wasn't getting any breaks really. And Dave came and he saw it, and I thought, I've blown it basically.
Well, he'd been recommended to me when I was at Watford, and I saw him at the end of the season playing for Doncaster down at Bristol City, right at the end, and I was impressed. He didn't play particularly well, I must confess, in the game that I saw him play.
In 87, 88, I left Doncaster Rovers and went to join Rotherham United for a short period. And my first phone call was immediately to try and sign Brian Deane for Rotherham United. Obviously the politics of me moving and wanting to take one of my players, what I felt one of my better players across the county, was frowned upon, so we didn't get the chance to sign him at Rotherham. Dave Bassett then made contact with me, and he was looking for a centre forward, and having played with John Fashanu, I told him that I knew there was a big centre forward with more pace, more ability, but not as much aggression. I mean, for me, Brian's a better player than the Fash, and having played with them both and against them both, I would sooner play against John Fashanu than Brian Deane.
Came to the end of the season, Dave Mackay had taken over, Dave Mackay and Joe Kinnear, and you know they offered me a contract which I just could not sign. You know, it was at the time I considered, you know, that I was worth a lot more than that, even though it was a small amount, you know, for a wage. I thought, you know, well, we've only scored 40 goals. I'm 19, and I've got 10 of the goals, you know. So I thought, well, my contract was up. I thought, well, I'm gonna try and get with a club where I'm gonna be able to learn from their players, you know. And Dave came in.
In the summer we were looking for a centre forward, and Brian was available, and when I met him I was suitably impressed by him as an individual, and felt that he could do well at Sheffield United.
Harry was the first one to actually bring me down for talks. And I remember Dave Cusack took me, you know, into the ground to come and talk. And as soon as I stepped through the gates, I thought, I didn't need to see anything else. I thought, I'm signing here, you know, because it looked so impressive, you know, just from walking into the car park, you know, driving into the car park, it was unbelievable, you know. And then like Jeff took me around the ground, and I think that Bruce Springsteen was having a concert at the time, you know, and he showed me, and it was just wow, you know, like I'd just been used to playing in front of like sheds, you know, in the third division. This was just unbelievable, and I thought I'd play here for free. You know, it was no longer a sort of like, you know, nothing. You know, the money wasn't anything anyway. I just wanted to be at a club where, you know, I could develop, you know, and come along slowly or quickly, you know, with a good squad of players, you know. And I thought, you know, it wouldn't have mattered. I'd have taken a cut to come here, you know. I really would have done.
No, he wouldn't tell me that. He certainly didn't tell me that last summer when he signed his new lucrative contract. But no, I mean, Bramall Lane is an impressive club, isn't it? And the entrance is brilliant. And obviously Brian came here and he was suitably impressed. And I was delighted, irrespective of whether he'd have played for us for nothing, that he actually decided to join Sheffield United.
The only person I can really think that I'd heard anything about was Tony, because I read an article in a magazine, I think Shoot or Match, where he made his debut for Watford. You know, and he was, everybody was raving about him, about his pace and skill. And you know, I think I remembered that he'd gone there, you know, and I thought to myself, oh, you know, brilliant.
Definite case of Brian who, when he first signed. Obviously, things have come a long way since then.
The first season for me was, I didn't feel as though I could do any wrong in front of goal. It was just unbelievable. The first 5 months, you know, everything I seemed to do was just going into the back of the net. I think I faded a bit towards the end of the season, but even still, it was, it was unbelievable. It was like a dream. I felt like Royal Rovers.
Well, when we started off in the third division, having come down from the second, we'd rebuilt the team, and Brian linked up with Tony Garner. They both got 30 goals each, which was a tremendous achievement, 60 goals. Brian did brilliant. He had an excellent season. He showed that he had talent. He showed he had ability to score goals, and he showed, above all, that he was an excellent character.
I remember two things about my debut with Sheffield United. The first thing was going out onto the pitch and warming up. And, just thinking, how am I going to play, what am I going to do, you just think about your first touch, and you think, if you can get your first touch right, then, everything's just going to flow from there.
I think I was substitute at Reading in our first league game. It was 3 or 4 seasons ago in the third division, and Francis Joseph pulled up with a hamstring injury early on in the game. So Dave Bassett had no option but to put me on up front alongside Brian Deane, and it sort of clicked.
The only other thing I can really remember is scoring my goal where, I can't remember who did, but I think it was Jock, Ian. Chipped it up to the far post, and, I managed to get above a centre-half, I think Hicks, and nodded it down into the bottom of the goals, and that made it 3-1 against Reading. And like our fans were behind the goal, and I've just gone up to that, like giving it all that, It was like brilliant feeling.
And the next game we played again together, and we both scored, and it just carried on from there.
The fact that they got on very, very well together personally was a special sort of bond. I think the height and the pace of Deane and pace of Garner was a magical little match. I think they've got a little bit of that with Little John now, but the awareness and being together with Garner bode for a good pairing.
Perhaps in the early days in the third division, I sort of fed off Brian a lot, off his flick-ons, and I exploited my pace to get him behind defenders. But Brian also is a lot quicker now than he was then, and he's very pacey too.
Whitehouse do? It's there, yes! Roberts. And it's there, yes! Can he get the better of Stanley? Neat one, and it is! Brian Deane again for Sheffield United! Now, good ball from Garner to Bryson. Finds Deane, it's through! It's a goal!
Forward again by Stancliffe. And Deane gets it wide for Bryson. Bryson, good footwork from him. Pike with a shot. Deane, oh, and there's a goal from Brian Deane.
Garner, Deane and Francis on this side. To Deane! 5-1! And it's there! Oh, Todd's beaten the offside trap this time, and it's 4 against 3. Garner! Deane! Given away to Bryson on the overlap nicely is Pike. Can he get his crossing? He does! And it's here! Yes! Duffield. Deane scores! Yes! United!
It's a good header, and it was from the minute that back header took place, it was always going to be a goal.
Well, I remember goals. I remember a goal he scored against Bury, which came in on the near post, and he spun it off the sort of laces of his boot that went into the far post. It wasn't a spectacular goal in terms that it was hit from distances or anything, but it was a super goal. And there were a lot of goals that Brian scored during that season that were good goals, but I didn't mind the ones that came off his knee and his shins also.
I had a bit of a dull patch. After about 2 or 3 games, I scored a good goal against Hartlepool away in the, I think it was Littlewoods Cup. Scored a really good goal. And then after that, I just died down a bit. And then Harry took me to one side, and he says, I feel as though you're getting a little bit uptight, and, just go out there and enjoy. And of course the next game was Chester at home, And like my brother in Leeds, Stephen, he'd been giving me a lot of sticks, saying, get your finger out, what you're doing, you got to keep scoring, kind of thing. So, we played that game, and of course I got a hat trick in the first half. Couldn't believe it. And the thing was, I missed 3 easier chances, so I could have had 6 goals in the first half. And I remember I had to come off because I got a whack.
While I was in the dressing room, I scored another 2 to get my hat trick as well. I don't think it was until I come off the pitch you realise that we both got hat tricks.
I've got changed and everything, and I've gone up to the tunnel, and I'm watching like the last 5 minutes, and I'm thinking I want that match ball. But of course, like Tony had scored a hat trick as well, hadn't he? So I'm thinking, I just felt like running out onto the pitch to claim the match ball, and Tony, the whistle went, and like. Tony was all right. Everybody came in. I went straight to the ref and I says, "Mind."
He was quickest to the match ball, so he got it.
Tony was all right about it. I still got it now. My brother. I went straight round to my brother's house in Leeds and I just stuffed the ball in his face as if to say, how about that?
What about the season after that? The season in the second division. If the third division season had been good for you, then the second division was good for you and good for Sheffield United again.
Yeah, second division was. It was getting to the stage where, you know, Sheffield United were a big club, but like there were a lot of like big clubs in the second division. You know, there was like West Ham, Ipswich, and Leeds had spent a load of money. You know, and like obviously there was a lot of pressure on them to do well, but nobody really expected us to do as well as we did, so that took a lot of the pressure off us. I think everybody was expecting Wolves to go straight back up, you know, having Andy Much and Steve Bull playing for them. But you know, we just kept low key, and you know, I think everybody was just waiting for us to blow up, you know, and like we just kept winning. You know, like Harry used to keep talking about the bubble and bursting and all this jazz, you know. But you know, we just kept going out there and winning our games.
Cross in. Bryson, nice ball out. Gannon, the little tip forward. The square at the back. And there is Brian Deane to finish it off. So it's Gannon then. Left-footed, this will be an in-swinger. So it is. To Deane! Oh yes! 1-0, Brian Deane up at the near post. So the long throw again from Sheffield United. To the near post. Headed out, but only as far as Bryson. Gets in there, a little deflection from Brian Deane. It's enough though. Now what can John Francis do? Sets up a nice little move here. Chance for the defender to clear his lines. He doesn't, he only passes it as far as Deane, and he makes no mistake. Flicked on, Brian Deane, oh lovely, far post. In first there, Garner, they've linked well again these two. Here's Bradshaw. It's on again, well, those two have combined with a series of flicks, and Brian Deane has scored. He got a lot of skill for a big man. This comes in. And across the area, and here's Booker. And Deane. And Deane again. How did he squeeze it in? Type of team that could thwart them. That's not a very good pass indeed, putting the defence under pressure. Here's Deane. And that's a brilliant goal. Oh, didn't he finish it well? So United again, with Deane meeting that one. Oh yes, what a goal! Newcastle in the spot of bother, and it's all sorted out by Brian Deane. Sheffield United again. They're going to punish Bradford further with Deane. They could do. Oh, very nice. So, in comes the corner. Flicked on, and Deane. It's 1-0. Bryson again. Oh goodness, he's been given a lot of space here. I love this. And that's a great ball out to Agana. And that's a fine finish from Brian Deane. Still does, because here's Deane. Well, Whitehurst needed to react there, but he didn't. Here's Bryson. Across it comes once more. Oh, what a finish! Again now, he's on and running. Oh, where did he find that bobble? Not cleared yet. It's come to Deane again. Can he finish it? He can. Oh yes, Brian Deane.
That game at Leicester, the first goal was like some out of a slapstick movie, you know. Just kept coming back and forth, you know, to the edge of the penalty box. You know, Martin Hodge got hit on the head. Somebody else got the ball smacked in their face on the line, and then like playing up as me, Tony, and one of the Leicester players on the line. I've put it in, and this is unreal, you know.
Great day. We took God knows how many fans, probably 10,000 fans down to Leicester. We needed to win at Leicester, and we started off a goal down, and then we came back. We just threw everything at them. Ended up winning 5-2, I think it was. But I mean, that was a great day. Probably our greatest, proudest moment.
Me and Tony were, by this time, we had this really hot relationship. We were stinging, and we were going to places, and you could tell that when either of us got the ball, the crowd would, they started sort of like giving us stick. Nothing malicious, but just, they didn't want us. They wanted the ball taken away from us as soon as possible. And it was nice because it was sort of like a respect.
Yeah, I mean, when the away fans start taunting you, etc., then you know that you're obviously giving them problems, and they're worried about you, and they're going to do what they can to put you off your game.
I love going out on the big stages. I just think these places were meant for me. I think when I look back, I'm thinking, where do I go from here? I'd had such a good season that I just thought, this is me. I thought, how can I sort of like improve on this? I was going into a higher division, and obviously people are going to ask questions about whether or not you can perform again, so there's a little bit of pressure from there, but I think the less you think about things like that, the better. You can just go out and get on with it.
Any nerves going into the first division? Of the fixture that was thrown up was Sheffield United against Liverpool. How did you feel before that?
I didn't really feel as nervous as I did making my debut in the second division in the first. I thought to myself, come on, Brian, you can't be a bad player, if you've like scored all these goals, so you got to be thinking about scoring now instead of sort of like, I think I'd conditioned myself not to be in awe of people, and like when we played Liverpool, it was like we got out on the pitch, and I suppose, looking back, I'd conditioned myself, but at the same time, when you see people like John Barnes come on for a warm-up, you're thinking, me on the same pitch. And, it was just great, but I thought, well, look, you're going to be frightened, or what? And, we just got on with it, and we were unlucky that day. Trace got injured, Pembo went in goals and had a nightmare, but he still got man of the match.
And here is the chance for Brian Deane, and it's 1-1! Sheffield have got their equaliser. Up and under again. Good footwork by Todd, and it's Deane. 4-0! Bryson. Good goal! It's Brian Deane puts Sheffield United in front! Far side is Bob Booker. Deane is there! Straight underneath the body of Nigel Spink.
So United go for the equaliser. This must be from Deane, and it is.
My brother Stephen, he's an avid Blades fan, as they say now.
Well, I always try and give Brian as much encouragement as I can. Just usually tell him to give it his usual 150%, which he always does, and things will keep happening for him.
Stephen's footballing week begins at about Wednesday, and he's always, he'll ring me up and he'll go, what are you going to do at the weekend? Are you going to kick up? That's what we say. You're going to kick up, and he puts me under a bit of pressure, but he's safe.
He likes criticism, especially if it's constructive, and he always tries to respond to it.
Yeah. I mean, I give him stick. I really do.
He'll get a phone call from me, and he'll get a ticking off when I've seen him play, and he'll get told what he hasn't done right or what he's done wrong. And he takes it like the gentleman and the pro that he is. He's always willing to learn, and I get a phone call probably once a week or probably a couple of times a month from him, both him and his brother Tony. They're good friends of the family, good friends of my children, and we get on very, very well together.
At the end of the day, Brian knows if he thinks I'm talking rubbish, he'll say, well, look, Tony, thanks for the advice, but,
you don't
no thanks.
I think when my parents come down to watch me, or anybody, I always seem to try too hard. That's why when I was a kid, I never used to want my parents to come and watch me, because, I'd be running around like a headless chicken, and I'd probably have had a nightmare. But, I only really like my parents coming to games when it's warmer, because, they mean a lot to me, and, the cold weather sometimes, up in them stands isn't much fun. But there is a bit of added pressure, but it's not a bad pressure, But luckily now a lot of our games are come on telly now.
When I don't go to the match, that radio is on from beginning to end.
She cannot stand in one place. She just cannot keep still. She'll be listening on the radio, and she's washing dishes, and she doesn't know what she's doing, but she can't keep still.
Washing them again, banging drawers, taking this out of here, this that out of there.
And then praise and grumble, and sometimes I feel like winging up myself, but they're there.
What role have the fans played in your career?
The fans here, to me personally, have been... I couldn't have asked for anything else. They've been unbelievable. I go out there on a Saturday and, it's just something special when people chant your name. It's almost like an appreciation thing. And they're unbelievable. You hear the songs like the Brian Deane and Tony Agana, Bibbledy Bobbly Boo, that kind of thing, and then Dino, we want to go, we want one now, and it's funny because I'm on the pitch and I can hear all this, and I'm thinking, they started singing, okay, cool, and it's good fun, I mean, sometimes we might not be in front when that's happening, and you can see that they've got a sense of humour. Even though we might not be winning, that they can still have a joke, or, they're trying to get their message across to you. The away fans, they're second to none. The balloons, everything is just... It's hard to imagine how any other team could have such fanatical, friendly supporters, you know, as ourselves. You know, we're so fortunate, I think. The fact that we've come through the divisions, I think the fans are saying, well, you know, this is great, you know. Like, we're going to places like Anfield and Goodison Park now, Old Trafford, and, you know, it's been such a long time, you know, that I think they can savour it more than most, you know. And, you know, they love it every occasion. I remember I talked to a few fans and they've said, you know, we just love it going to all the big places, you know, it's great. And of course, you know, when we put one over on, you know, the other side, it's even better then, you know. I think we've gained the respect, you know, of all the other clubs in the First Division now.
Deane, he's still got it, it's through Wood's legs, it's there, and that should do it for Sheffield United. Hodges. Here's Little John, and Deane, yes, there it is! Sheffield United, Brian Deane, near post. Always put it into the path of Deane, and Deane has scored at Anfield to open the scoring. It's into Hodges, and Deane, yes, 5. Somehow contrived to get that one in. Away by Kevin Gage to Cork. Cork helps it on. Onside now. Oh, Dobbelaar's come on walkabouts. He's dispossessed. This will be spectacular if it goes in. Oh, look at that! 45 yards for Brian Deane. Deane, he's onside. Held back, keeps on going. Deane, he deserves to score. He was held by the Liverpool players. But he went on and did the business to score his second.
First time across the green. Super saves by Walker, but what a run by Kevin Gage. Barnes, Deane, 2-0! Well, that was a superb move by United.
When anybody says to me, which game have you enjoyed most, I have to say the Liverpool game for me personally. I mean, the Derby games were great, you know, and like, it was a personal triumph for me coming back from my illness to play against Sheffield Wednesday and, you know, scoring. But like, the first goal I scored against Liverpool, like, sometimes when I watch it, I don't know whether to laugh because of the way Grobbelaar came out and the way the camera shows him afterwards, or just to sort of like think to myself, well, I can't believe that was me, you know, because that's the kind of thing that I think people like Ray Wilkins, Trevor Francis, you know, that kind, Glenn Hoddle, you know, that kind of player does, you know. Now, you know, I've always believed that I could do that kind of thing, you know. I've had no doubt in my mind personally that I could, you know, perform that kind of skill. You know, I read something in the Flashing Blade a little while ago which said, you know, talked about the goal I scored against Liverpool, the first one, and said how many first division strikers could score that goal. You know, it's not for me to say who can do what. You know, I'm not a supporter, I'm a footballer. You know, but you know, it's nice that when you do a bit of skill or whatever, everybody appreciates it. And then of course the second goal, you know, where I took it past Bruce, you know, knocked it in. That gave me a lot of pleasure because, you know, I haven't really had many one-on-ones this season, you know, and I was just so happy with the way how I finished it clinically, you know. And then, you know, I went off to the crowd and I was like, looking back, you can't see it on the video, but my celebration for the first one, it's like I thought I was doing a lap of honour. You know, I've gone towards the far shed, the John Street, then I've gone towards the Cop, and then like I've seen the referee and I've like sprinted away from him and I've like gone up the side, you know, back towards the centre circle. The second goal, because I didn't think that it was going to happen, I just didn't know how to celebrate, you know, and I've just run over to the far side and I've thought, wow, you know what I mean? It was brilliant, brilliant. Loved it. The better player you become, the more publicity you're going to get, and you know, you're just going to have to cope with it. If you want to be very successful, you just got to learn to cope with that. That's just one of the things that, you know, comes along with being successful.
Well, Brian and Sheffield United in the last 5 years, or nearly 5 years, have come a long way together. They've grown up together, and I think that Sheffield United's been good for Brian, and Brian's certainly been good for Sheffield United, and I've got the great admiration for the player.
When I joined the club, I don't think I could have joined a club with a better manager for me personally. You know, I was only 19, and Harry is a good motivator for any player, you know.
It's got to be the steal of the century. He's got a young man who he's paid £30,000 for, who's gone on to make England appearances, who's now, I should think, one of the main striking assets in the country, and he's got to be worth in excess of £2.5 million. So he's certainly done a good job there signing for Sheffield United, and I feel he's done a very, very good job keeping him at the club so long.
Well, with Brian's goal scoring record and how well he's done for us, and obviously clubs are going to be looking, Brian's going to be linked with many clubs. He has been in for the last 3 years, he's had to live with that, and he's coped with it very, very well. But at the same time, he's shown a loyalty to Sheffield United. And at the start of this season, I said to Brian that I felt that he was still better off staying with Sheffield United in preference to going to another club at that time. He thought long and hard about it and came to the same conclusion.
What's the pressure like when you pull on the England shirt? Are you trying to impress even harder?
Well, you've got to. I mean, you're stepping up another level. It's, you know, when I made my debut in Australia, I was like thinking, Brian, look where you are, look what you're doing. You know, I pulled on the shirt and I thought to myself, just go out and do what you did when you made your debut for Sheffield United.
He gave it to me as a souvenir, like, you know. So the other son, Stephen, he's a picture craft. He frames, so I asked him to frame it for me.
The fact that I'd got the recognition and everything, you know, I was just over the moon. You know, it just capped last season beautifully for me. You know, we'd had this really good run. You know, and the team as a whole had done well. I mean, I think that the fact that I got picked was a reflection of how well the team was doing and how well everybody had, you know, cohesed together.
Anybody who knows Brian Deane knows that he's a very, very nice, likeable young man. It's not changed him becoming a Premier League player. It's not changed him, as far as I'm concerned, in becoming an international.
I always remember I used to play gates as a little boy. You got a tennis ball, there's about 3-4 people in the front street, and you've got to kick it against somebody else's gate. You know, that was like me making it as a professional footballer. You know, so it was like I'd sort of like planned it in my mind what I wanted, you know, and like at times I'd even written down things that what I should have achieved at a certain time. Like, I remember putting down in a diary one time that, you know, I want to score X amount of goals, and another one was I want to make me under-21's debut, you know, and I didn't go far wrong there.
He has an awareness for other people's appreciation towards him, and he appreciates them just the same.
Sometimes if I feel as though I haven't had a good game, then, you know, there's sort of like something in the back of my head. It's like a little ball, you know, and every now and again my mind will focus on this thing, and I'll say what's wrong, and then I'll know exactly what it is, and then, you know, I try and forget, and sometimes it takes a day, it takes two. I mean, I don't believe there's many footballers who can, if they've had a bad game, who can just switch off like that. You know, I think that's just a myth, really.
You sort of end up reliving every kick and every move in the game.
Yeah, definitely. If I've missed an open goal, then that guarantees me no sleep whatsoever. You know, but I've been quite fortunate recently from that point of view.
I mean, a lot of people seem to call him the gentle giant and all, but don't be fooled by his, you know, calm demeanour. He is and can be quite ruthless when he has to be.
He's a threat to people. If he stays clear of injury, he'll play for a long time, I'm sure of that. Hopefully he'll go on to make pots and pots of money and get more international honours.
I said a long time ago to my parents, you know, I'm going to make them very proud of me, you know, and I still feel that I can improve on what I've done.
He always said that he'll make us feel proud. And sometimes he said, do you feel proud of me, Daddy? And Mom would say, oh, yes, I feel proud of you. He always look after us, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I can speak for his parents. They're very proud of him, and I'm very proud of having worked with him and helped a little bit along onto the way of success he's had.
You know, he'll go all the way because he's got the right mentality, he's got good skill, he's got pace. You know, he's an all-round player now. I say he was a raw talent when he first came here, but now he's definitely an all-round player. He's got skill, pace, he's got the right attitude off the pitch, on the pitch, and as I say, I think he'll go the whole way.
I was delighted this year when Brian decided to sign a further contract with the club, and I think that was good business for him and good business for us, and I think the two clubs and player can go a long way. But of course nothing stays the same forever, but it's been a brilliant 5 years up to now.
Coming into a new season, you always feel, you know, can I get on the score sheet? And I always felt, you know, that I could score. I scored against Man United before, and Brad's put a throw across, you know, and I think one of their players, it's a long ball through, I think I went to get a touch to it, and, you know, it went past me and Steve Bruce, and Alan Cott ran onto it, and Gary Pallister brought him down, and, you know, we hadn't had a penalty all the season before, and I thought to myself, well, you know, why not? I just scored and I was feeling good, why not? You know, I took it, sent him the wrong way, tried to, a bit of gamesmanship, but, you know, it didn't bother me. I have to say, you know, looking back, you know, I scored 100 goals. I'd tried to map out at some stage, you know, where exactly I was going to be going. You know, I never actually imagined myself as somebody who was going to be making a living in the 3rd division or the 2nd division. For me, it was like the 1st division, you know, or bust. You know, I never really considered, I mean, I still don't really now, you know, I mean, a lot of people know who I am, but the word professional footballer can be, you know, misleading. You know, if you say to somebody you're a professional footballer, it doesn't exactly mean that you've made it, you know. I think the people who have made it are people like, when you're talking about making it, it's like people like Gary Lineker or, you know, Gordon Strachan, Trevor Francis, Ray Wilkins, you know, the people who are the cream, you know, they've made it, you know. Those are the people who you look to, you know.
How important a part of your life has Sheffield United Football Club become?
Basically, Sheffield United has been my life for the last 4 years. I find it very hard to concentrate on anything else other than football during the season. It's been, you know, I try and prepare myself, you know, for every game, you know, that we play. I don't, you know, I'm very sensible because I realise that, you know, this is my tool. and as a result, you know, I have to look to get the best maximum performance out of it, you know. So you know, football has been my life since I, you know, actually signed, you know, professional contract forms for Doncaster Rovers. So, but you know, it's become, because it's become so high profile, you know, it has to be your life, you know, it can't be anything else. I have to be on call for Sheffield United 24 hours a day. Yeah, I have to be prepared to go anywhere or do anything for the club, you know, because your life is football, you know.